Hello everyone and welcome to my final project for this course. This is our instructional theory project. So first I'm going to kind of go over what I'm going to be talking about. So I'm going to start off by kind of just talking about my philosophy of teaching and learning and my stances on that. Then I'm going to give you kind of a background knowledge of where I'm teaching and where I'm at right now, and then kind of how I incorporate all of these different learning theories into um, my teaching. So, with that being said, I'm going to start off by just going over kind of my philosophy for teaching. Like, I believe that the purpose of education is kind of to prepare students with the knowledge they need to succeed later in life. My job as an educator is to teach students that learning is so imperative and so important. And kind of with the knowledge they learn, students will be able to become kind of well-rounded individuals and succeed in society and later in life. As a special education teacher, I kind of need to integrate a variety of cultures and backgrounds because although we may look different, we can relate to each other one way or another. I think it's extremely important to establish a core set of rules and expectations for students, and having that behavioral policy is essential. But I do believe that it's important for students to be involved in making these decisions with me. Um, so all children learn differently, and some students have different strengths and weaknesses, but no child is more capable of learning. And I think that's very important to note with me being a special education teacher. So every child should have the opportunity to be able to learn, in my case, even if they have a disability. I will just have to keep these different learning styles in mind while working on lessons and activities, use different strategies to teach various topics, and kind of teaching a lesson in multiple ways that will appeal to all types of learners. Um, I believe it is also important to kind of keep students engaged and interested in your lessons and that sort of thing. Collaboration with other teachers and administration is a very important part of learning, as well with as also with parents. And it's just teaching is something that I'm passionate about, and with hard work and preparation, I know that I can help my students to succeed. So my kind of overall philosophy of statement, let's see if I can get this working. There we go. Is I believe that all students have the potential to bring something unique and special to the world. I will help students to develop their potential by believing in them as capable individuals. I will assist students in discovering who they are so they can express their own opinions and ideas. Howard Gardner has indicated the importance of teaching to different learning styles of all students. My role as a teacher is to give students the tools they need in order to gain knowledge. I will teach the needs of all of my students so that they can feel capable and successful. So that's kind of my stance on education and kind of my philosophy. Um, so moving on, I'm going to kind of talk about my background knowledge. So I went to Bradley University to get my degree in special education, and then I started my teaching career in life skills at Von Steuben Middle School, and I taught fifth through eighth life skills. And then I moved over to Washington, Illinois, and started at Washington Middle School, which is where I'm at right now. And I teach sixth grade special education. So, kind of how it works at my school is I teach a pull out English language arts class, and I also teach a pull out math class, and then I also co teach math as well in the general education setting. And then, of course, I teach RTI as well. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Um, and now I'm going to talk about kind of my theories in the classroom. So I kind of separated into six different areas of what we've learned so far during this course. Um, First off is the behavioral learning theory. Then I'm going to talk about Gagne's theory, active learning, gameplay, technology in the classroom, and e-learning. So these are kind of the theories and topics that we learned during this class that I use in my classroom and integrate into my teaching. So first, I'm going to start with behavioral learning theory. So this is B.F. Skinner's theory, and it's based on the belief that learning can be understood, explained, and predicted entirely on the basis of observable events. This theory looks at the behavior of the learner, along with its environmental antecedents and consequences. The behavioral theory influenced early conceptions of instructional feedback, and feedback was considered essentially equivalent to reinforcement. So in my classroom, I think that I use the behavioral learning theory more on the behavior side of things, um, opposed to kind of instruction. But I really look at my kids that may struggle with behavior in the classroom, and I look at kind of the antecedents of their behavior and what happened before that cause them to have this behavior. And then we kind of need to look at how and when that behavior occurs, um, if there's a pattern there, and kind of the consequences or rewards of that behavior. And then this helps me to plan my instruction and kind of plan to get a behavior plan in place for this student, plan for behavior charts, that sort of thing. So that's kind of where I use the behavioral learning theory is kind of more my of the behavior aspect of teaching, and that sort of thing. Moving on to Gagne's theory. So in Gagne's theory, there are three components. So there's a taxonomy of learning outcomes, there's internal and external learning conditions associated with the acquisition of each category of learning outcome, and then there's kind of 9 events of instruction that each facilitate a specific cognitive process during learning. So I really look at this and I think that this is kind of, without me knowing, this is how I plan a lesson. Um, as I've learned, your lesson plans aren't going to go as you always plan for them to go, but these 9 events are kind of, you automatically look at this when teaching. So I like this theory because I'm a planner. I like steps, I like checklists, and it really helps you organized. So with Gagne's theory and within my lessons, first thing you need to do is you need to gain your students' attention. You need to inform your students of the learning objective, and I do this by writing the objective on the board, so that we know what we're learning that day. And so my students then have that knowledge of what they're going to be learning as well. And then you need to stimulate recall of prior knowledge. So if we're, for example, learning order of operations, I first need to remind them um, the PEMDAS. So I need to remind them that first we're going to look at parentheses, then exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. If my students need a reminder on how to do those skills, so let's say one of my students forgot how to do multiplication, 2 divide 2 digit multiplication, then we would need to recall that prior knowledge before moving on. The next step is to present new information. So this is kind of the core of your lesson when you're presenting that new information. Then you need to provide guidance if needed. So provide examples and go through those things with your students and then kind of elicit performance. So this is when your students are showing that they know what they're doing. So this could be, exit slip. It can be a practice page, that sort of thing. And then provide feedback. So that's really super important for your kids to know that they're doing something right or kind of what they need to fix in order to do better. And then you need to assess their performance and make sure that they have retained that information and can do those steps over again. So I think this is a huge part of just your everyday lesson planning and that sort of thing. Moving on to active learning. Students should be active rather than passive in their learning. That's a given. Characteristics of active learners are students that are talking and interacting with others, generating new ideas and cognitive structures, and determining their own direction. You want your students to be engaged. Always, always, always. You want to make learning fun for them so that they can recall that information later. Um, so kind of the different types of active learnings. We have our cooperative learning, which that can look like small groups where students are working together to maximize their learning. So really collaborating with their teammates and classmates. We have problem-based learning, which is when you give students a problem to understand and solve, with kind of the goal of having students learn throughout solving the problem. We have team-based learning, which is when the instructor teacher assigns students with different skill sets to teams, and they work together and keep each other accountable and that sort of thing to um, work on a project, assignment, that sort of thing. Collaborative learning is when you place students in group and let them generate their own culture, community, and that sort of thing. And then kind of peer assisted learning when students acquire knowledge and skills through active helping through equal classmates. And I do this a lot in my gen ed class when I'm co-teaching. Um, so they're not always so my students are not always hearing from me, right? They can be paired with kind of a leader or another classmate, and the classmate could be teaching them a skill or working with them on an assignment. And I think that's really been beneficial for my students to have that peer assisted learning. So they're, because I can tell them over and over and over and over how to do something, but hearing it from someone else sometimes really helps. So these are all kind of types of active learning. This is the kind of things I like to see in my classroom when my students are working together and they're engaged and that sort of thing. Moving on to game and play theory. I love for my students to have fun, but it needs to be structured in the right way. So learning should be goal oriented. We should always have a goal in mind, and all problems should have some value to the learning. Learning should be active and interactive, so solving problems in the game should require that a player seeks out different resources, um, kind of provide different types of information, multiple opportunities for interaction, and require active participation to solve the problem. Learning should provide adaptive challenge and support. So it shouldn't just be easy, right? They need to work to solve or win the game, that sort of thing. And learning should also incorporate feedback. It is key that feedback provides hints and prompts rather than direct answers or instruction, and that sort of thing. So how it looks in my classroom, I use games often in my classroom. Like I said, I use them as kind of supplemental instruction, and I teach the lesson and then kind of use games for my students to practice their skills. I like to incorporate technology a lot, and I have buzzers in my room, and my students go insane. They love it. They want to hit the buzzer first and answer a question. So I highly recommend buzzers. If if you're okay with a little noise, because it can get out of hand, but you have to teach them the rules and procedures beforehand, and it will work out, and they will love it. Um, Technology in the classroom, moving on to that. So as a teacher, I want to facilitate and inspire students' learning and creativity, design and develop digital age learning experiences and assessments, and kind of just really incorporate that technology in the classroom to help my students succeed. So kind of how it looks in my classroom. It's obviously a lot different right now with COVID, but I do have a class website that my students can automatically go to find all resources of the topic that we're learning, um, or just extra games, that sort of thing. Every student has their own Chromebook, which is super helpful. We also have iPads, and I have a lot of online resources. We're Google School, so we have Google everything, which is nice. So my students know how to collaborate in Google Docs, make their own Google Slides, that sort of thing. We use IXL, Prodigy, and Reflex for math, and then I utilize Lexia Core 5 and vocabulary for ELA. And like I said, we do like to play a lot of games on our technology. E-learning is kind of what we're doing right now, right? It's a broad term that encompasses all learning that involves technology in any way. It looks a lot differently right now, but these are some things that we may be using: Zoom, Google Classroom, Screencast, Google Meet. My online website is huge right now. And then talking about finally social media. these are some things that you can incorporate. I love to use blogs. I use YouTube. My students love making videos.